time for something I had an awful lot of fun making. Since I already exemplified how damn good the Kirby games are, let's delve into one of the greatest aspects about this series, the bosses. Throughout the countless number of innocent creatures that Kirby mutilates, some people often forget that Kirby does in fact fight evil beings. In fact, some of the evil that Kirby has fought is a direct threat to the entire universe itself. Needless to say, there are an awful lot of unnerving bosses in the Kirby series. Ranging from disturbing, easy as fuck, or even menacing as all Halcondra, there are an awful lot of awesome boss battles in this franchise. So, let's delve in to see what my absolute favorite member of this franchise's enormous boss roster is. Be warned, I am including final bosses in this list, so spoilers will be present. I'll make sure to give you a warning whenever I give out spoilers. That sound good to you? Alrighty then. Without any more slowing up, let's get this boss gauntlet on a roll. Starting off this list is one of the most basic bosses in Kirby's Adventure. Care to place your bets? The paint roller? No. The heavy mole? No. Okay, now you're just being a smartass. Nah, those are all too basic for my tastes. I want a boss that feels unique to me. With that said, I've chosen Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright as the first boss on my list. Yes, these guys actually happen to be my favorite boss in Kirby's Adventure. The first notable thing I always think of with this fight is the design of the two bosses. Mr. Shine is based upon a crescent moon, and Mr. Bright is based on the sun. I have hurt derp. Just think of them as the precursors of Brighton and Twyla from Mario Party 6. Now, when most players take a first glimpse at these two, they seem like somewhat of a joke. It may not seem like anything special, but if you compare these two to a tree with eyes, then you'll probably agree with me on their design. Not to mention, you also have to take this into account. You're fighting both the sun and the moon at the same time. Yeah, one isn't enough. They gotta throw both of them at you. Well, anyway, let's talk about the battle itself. The fight starts with one of them remaining in the sky, and the other one stays on the ground and fights Kirby. For attacks, Mr. Shine throws little golden glowing boomerangs at you, which can give you the cutter ability if inhaled, and Mr. Bright shoots a burst of fire at you. Another attack that both of them share is the ability to charge at you at a reasonably fast speed. In this fight, you have to remain aware of both Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright, since both of them can damage you regardless of whether or not you're in the air or on the ground. Plus, the one member that's in the sky can still pull off attacks to damage you with. One tiny little detail I like about this boss is that whoever's in the sky, whether it be the sun or the moon, will make it their respective form of daylight. Don't you just love small things like that? The reason I chose these two over all the other bosses in Kirby's Adventure is because they feel like something special among the other bosses. Maybe it's just me being me, but I still prefer them over all the other bosses in the game. It's not exactly a difficult fight, but the fun battle and the charming design of the bosses just sells it for me. Definitely a breath of fresh air when compared to the paint roller. Hey, after you're done painting that Waddle Dee, why don't you draw yourself a less predictable attack pattern, huh? Okay. At number 14, we have one of the more memorable bosses from Kirby Superstar. Can anyone say computer virus? Not that kind. Getting closer. There you go. The computer virus from Superstar and Superstar Ultra is one of the more special bosses in the series. The most obvious change with this boss is the addition of a text box and an RPG-ish style. On par with the turn-based RPG genre, Kirby and the computer virus will take turns attacking. The first to move is usually the virus, but it's mixed at times. Being a virus, this boss summons multiple different virtual subjects to do the fighting for it. These virtual fighters are a glob of slime, a weird dancing puppet, a magician, or witch if you will, an evil knight, and the great dragon. Since I've already listed what the enemies are, I might as well explain all what they do. The slime and the puppet do nothing but take hits and act like imbeciles the whole time. Okay, they sometimes shoot a single star at you, but this pretty much never happens. All of the others, however, have actions that actually could be considered threatening. The magician can cast spells of both fire and ice, he can shoot stars at you, and he can even use a defense spell to half the damage you give him. The evil knight and the great dragon do pretty much the same thing, but the speed and damage of the attacks given increase with every passing form. To be honest, this boss isn't all that difficult, but it has a certain charm to it. I love the fact that the battle takes on an RPG style, and how the text in the text box can be pretty strange and, granted, mildly entertaining. I earned 185 experience points. Oh, really? Does this mean I can evolve now? 2 exam score points? Courage points? By this point, you just know the developers are fucking around with you. I earned 2 greediness points? What the hell did I do to earn that? Not sharing my mustard of doom? Now I've earned 2 appetite points? Honesty points? Love points? Okay, I'll admit it. I get a chuckle out of every time I face this boss. You just gotta love the designer's clever, albeit blunt, sense of humor. Overall, the computer virus doesn't offer much in terms of action, but it's just one of those fun bosses that make you glad to be playing a Kirby game. Now, if only real computer viruses were this mellow and humorous. I guess that's not gonna happen. All they give out is asshole points, and nobody wants those. Kirby's Epic Yarn. A childish mess of bullshit to some, and a vibrant wonderland of creativity to others. Regardless of what your honest thoughts on the game are, there is little reason to deny the complexity in terms of its boss battles. This game is pure delight all the way, and the bosses are no exception to this fact. They're not exactly difficult, but the designers made sure to put some kind of unique twist in each fight. Whether it be the unraveling of Capamari's body, or even flinging Fangora across the battlefield. All of the bosses are a joy to tear apart, but I ultimately had to choose only one boss from Epic Yarn. The taker of this cake is none other than Squashini the Magnificent, or to go with his official name, just Squashini. Upon entering this dark stage, Squashini appears and starts the battle. The main factor that determines all of Squashini's actions is that slot machine in the middle there. No, this isn't Casino Zone, so you don't have to worry about those damn Robotnik symbols, but what you do have to worry about is 4 different ways of attack. As you would clearly imagine, whatever symbols are matched up on the slot machine determines what attack Squashini will do. If 3 hat symbols match up, Squashini will hide in his top hat and play a little memory game with you. If you pick the wrong hat, you'll get an enemy. But if you pick the correct hat, you'll get a chance to fling that fucker across the stage. If 3 card symbols match up, Squashini will simply generate loads of playing cards to coat the ground with them. All you need to do is lasso one of the cards he throws and fling it straight at him in order to stun him for another chance of attack. If 3 rope symbols match up, you get a mildly entertaining form of torture. Squashini will close the curtains on you and ties Kirby to a massive bomb and will take a moment to laugh at your face. I don't blame him, as Kirby's struggling with the yarn kinda reminds me of that toy train scene from Stuart Little. The final attack pattern is extremely basic. If 3 cape symbols match up, Squashini will turn his wand into a cape that can spawn bombs in which he can use to attack you with. All you need to do here is pick up one of the bombs and throw it at him. Once you manage to toss him around 3 times, Squashini will be defeated and the stage will be all yours. Overall, the fight with Squashini is full of charm, and it's definitely my favorite boss from Epic Yarn. Though, Squashini does lose some points for me when I remember that King Boo did essentially the same thing in Super Mario Sunshine. Nevertheless, this is still a fun boss that I find myself coming back to every so often. Good show, Squashini. Good show. As I've stated before, Kirby's Return to Dreamland is my favorite Kirby game ever. So it should be no surprise that I would delve into the awesome bosses that this masterpiece has to offer. No matter how much it varies with each one, I enjoy every boss in Return to Dreamland. Whether it be the quirky Mr. Duder, the somewhat annoying Goriath, or even the heavy-duty Metal General, I have fun with every boss, for different reasons. To find number 12 on this list, we have to take a dive into Area 5, Nutty Noon. When you're reaching the boss tower, everything is as normal as it could be. Alright, what do I have to fight this time? Oh wait, there's the Starcutter's mast! Let's grab it! Well, that was easy. I didn't even have to fight a boss. I should have known better. Meet the Grand Doomer, the leader of all the Sphere Doomers. Despite this boss residing in the first main area of the game, the Grand Doomer fights unlike any of the bosses found on Popstar. For the first half, the Grand Doomer fights in a style that is very similar to all the other Doomers. Only this time, the magnitude of the attacks are amplified greatly. The Grand Doomer can teleport, fly all over the screen, swamp you with a barrage of energy spheres, and he can even create a portal on the floor which he can use to spawn dark jaws to chew you up with. Once you manage to bring him down to half health, the Grand Doomer will pull off his attacks slightly faster and goes downright bullet happy with all his energy spheres. This phase is more or less the same as before, but he's just a little bit faster and a tad bit more unpredictable. All of this is crazy intense as it is, but the fight gets even more awesome when you manage to whittle down the Grand Doomer's health to next to nothing. The Grand Doomer solidifies and forms into a rock-like structure. The only thing that could damage the Grand Doomer in this phase are super abilities. The Super Sword ability, to be more accurate. Hit him 4 times with the Super Sword, and he'll revert to his initial form. With the Super Sword in hand, you now deliver the final slashdown. God damn, that finisher is awesome. The Grand Doomer is nothing short of thrilling. The boss's design is awesome, the finisher is beast, and man, will you listen to this music? Just utter brilliance. As I've noted before, Kirby and the Amazing Mirror has some killer bosses in it. Most of them are uniquely designed and are relatively fresh to the Kirby style, much like the game they reside in. Some worth noting are Wiz, Gobbler, and Dark Meta Knight. Just about every one of these bosses is fun in their own right, but there are 2 bosses in this game that truly stick out from the others. The first one shown on this list is none other than the menace of the Mirror World, Dark Mind. Being the first final boss shown for this list, Dark Mind makes for one of the longest boss battles in the entire series. There are a total of 6 phases in this fight, with all of them being represented by all 3 of Dark Mind's forms. The first form is the most complex, having an extremely awesome and evil-looking design. His initial form can perform several ways of attacking. Such as the majority of the bosses in this series, Dark Mind will constantly warp around the arena while firing multiple colored stars in either a wave or stream-like formation. In the first phase, these are the only attacks that Dark Mind will throw at you. As the phases progress, Dark Mind will grow more hectic and perform several other types of attacks. There's the homing star attack, where Dark Mind will hurl stars into the corner, which then home in on you. Lastly, there's the bomb that he plants in the middle of the arena. You really need to inhale this bomb, as you will take damage from it if you don't. Once you plow through the initial form 4 separate times, Dark Mind will proceed to change forms. His second form is just a giant orange eye. Uncreative? Yes. Boring? Not even close. This form can take a lot more abuse than his initial form, so you're in for a long phase. This form attacks you by firing lasers down at you, dropping more bombs, spawning numerous enemies, inverting the screen, and even spawning mirrors that can reflect his projectiles around the arena. These mirrors will also hurt you if you touch them, so be on your toes. If it wasn't already obvious, the form's weak spot is its pupil. Tear at it long enough to whittle his health down to nothing. Then there's his final form. It's a bit underwhelming, but man, is it satisfying. Being pummeled for the 5th time total, Dark Mind ditches Kirby and flies up into the sky. Obviously enough, Kirby then grabs a warp star and proceeds to follow him. The final phase of the battle turns into an overhead shooting dogfight, where both Kirby and Dark Mind shoot at each other until either one of them drops dead. It's nothing too difficult, but it's a lot of fun nonetheless. To sum it all up, the fight with Dark Mind is a superb finale for Amazing Mirror. It's unique, hectic, and admittedly somewhat challenging without the master ability. Kirby Mass Attack, a game of cuteness, of happiness, and even forced interactions. Okay, what am I saying? This game is violent beyond belief. You all know that by now. Mass Attack shows the true horror of what teamwork can really do. After all, working in numbers gets the job done. The formula of raping everything in sight is something that works well enough on standard enemies, but what about the bosses? Right, like that's any fun. Well, you'd be surprised actually. Kirby Mass Attack, being the unique game that it is, has plenty of fun bosses within it, ranging from the simple yet fun battle with Dedede, or even the epic confrontation of the almighty Skull Lord. I enjoy just about every boss in Mass Attack, but the one that simply steals the cake is none other than the game's main antagonist, the evil entity known as Necrodeus. Being that this dude spawned Kirby's 9 henchmen to fuck Dreamland over, there's no denying that he is capable of dealing out pain. Necrodeus' design is extremely basic, being the classic floating head with 2 hands that somehow levitate all on their own. Sure, he's ridiculously uncreative in visual design, but the same thing can't be said about his battle. Necrodeus has numerous attacks to nail you with. His most basic attack is to simply use those massive hands to crush you into oblivion. If you're not careful, this attack can eliminate every Kirby in your group. Every now and then, Necrodeus will slam his hand down so hard that his hand will get stuck in the ground. This is your chance to toss all of your Kirbys onto the orbs on top of his hands. Do this enough times and the hand will deactivate momentarily. Do this to both of his hands and the second phase of the battle will begin. In this phase, Necrodeus will form both of his hands together to create a single target for you to focus on. Something's amiss here, am I right? Like the previous phase, all you need to do here is throw your Kirbys right into the pain beacon, weak spot, in order to damage him. While it is an obvious weak spot, these formed hands also serve as a dangerous lure. What I mean by that is when you attack his weak point, you better be damn careful that your Kirbys don't stay on there for too long, as his palms can crush every single Kirby that stays on there. In combination of forming his hands together, Necrodeus will also attempt to zap you with sparks of electricity generated from his fingertips. After you've dealt enough damage to his weak spot, both of his hands will drop down to the floor. You then have to clobber both of them. Simple as that. With both of his hands destroyed, Necrodeus will enter its final phase, the head. Necrodeus destroys the floor, and the rest of the fight takes place in midair. Here, you just float about as Necrodeus shoots lasers and giant balls of electricity at you from all angles. At times, Necrodeus will spawn Scullions to go in and head after you. With these Scullions, you really should take all of them out. And fast. Because if you're not fast enough, one of the Scullions will take a Kirby straight to Necrodeus, and it will be eaten alive. Bitch, you want to eat something? How about my fury? To destroy the head, all of your Kirbys need to attack the eye inside of its mouth once it tries to fire a laser at you. Damage his eye enough times and the fight will be brought to an end. To sum up this entire fight, it's just outright thrilling. The design of the villain is awesome, the difficulty is fairly leveled, and it's just downright addicting to just pound both of his hands into oblivion. However, Necrodeus does lose points for one reason. His battle theme. It's a nice tune in its own right, but it just doesn't spell out the feeling of a final battle, especially when compared to the other final boss themes we'll hear later on. If Necrodeus' battle theme were more fast-paced and intense, this fight would have ranked up much higher. Here's an interesting riddle for you. What do you get when you cross Goro, a knight's helmet, a metallic golem, and a jet turbine? Give up? Well, here's your answer. You get the greatest boss from Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. It's the very king of Carrot Castle, the Mega Titan. Oh god, this thing's awesome. The first thing I need to mention is the boss itself. Seriously, look at this thing. Does he look awesome or what? As for the battle itself, this makes for one of the more unique bosses in the series, especially the way you defeat the boss. For starters, the Mega Titan's battle arena consists of an extremely cramped area, with both walls on the side being coated in electricity. Rather than taking damage from any of Kirby's abilities like any other boss in the series would, the Mega Titan doesn't take any damage from any of the copy ability attacks you throw at him. With the exception of Spark, every attack you use on him will only bounce him away. The only thing he's weak against is electricity, meaning you either have to use Spark to damage him, or send him flying into either one of the two walls beside him. This factor alone gives the Mega Titan huge points, but the battle itself is fun as well. As you're trying to knock him into the walls, he will have all four of his arms try to pound your face into the dust. The fact that there's four of these arms makes this battle all the more hectic. If you manage to damage him enough times, the main body will collapse and explode. Once you take out its body, you still have the head to destroy. The head is really easy to kill, as it only takes 2 hits from its own missiles to finish him off. With all the crazy shit going on in this fight, this is sure to be a boss to remember. Definitely my favorite boss in Amazing Mirror. As far as standard bosses go, the Mega Titan is truly a unique boss. With a slick design, intense attack patterns, and a truly special way of killing him, the Mega Titan is well warranted at this spot. Not to mention, it's called Mega Titan. How much more awesome can you get? Kirby 64 is such a damn fine game. The graphics, the humor, the music, the gameplay, just everything! Ugh, I love this game! Seeing how I've already praised Kirby 64 enough as it is, I won't go deep into detail about it again. At least not right now. However, there is simply no way I can overlook its selection of bosses. Like many other Kirby games, Crystal Shards has some killer bosses hidden behind its pixelated exterior. Some honorable mentions of mine are Pix, Magman, and hell, even Wispy Woods is awesome in this game. All of them are superb, but which of them is number 8? Well, if you've seen my top 10 robots in video games list, you already know the answer to that. It's the towering mechanoid master of Shiverstar, the HRH. I know that I've talked about this guy before, but I simply need to go over him a second time. The fight with the HRH is just absolute epic. Being the only enemy in the game not under Dark Matter's influence, the HRH has its crosshairs pointed straight at you. This thing doesn't fuck around. The first form of the HRH has 4 different attacks. 2 of his attacks have to do with his arms. He can either swing his arms straight across the screen, or he can swat both of them together and slam them down at the same time. His other 2 attacks have to do with his arsenal of weapons. He can either fire missiles out of his, utility belt to land on the ground and explode. Or he can use that beacon of his to project a thin yellow laser to spray across the ground. Once you damage his arms enough, Phase 2 commences. Having had his ass kicked, the HRH will fly up and land on the very bridge you're walking on and transform into his HRE form. This just shows you that this boss wants to personally rip you to shreds, no matter how close he has to get. His HRE form has around the same number of attacks as before. He can scatter missiles all over, fire a large rocket at you, dice you with his 2 wire cutter-like appendages, and he'll even attempt to completely crush you under his weight. Same method as before, just attack his weak spot enough times and he's done. But be warned, you need to take this thing out quickly. After all, the bridge doesn't go on forever. The HRH is just a great boss battle. With its awesome design and its undeniably savage programming, the HRH gets my vote for the greatest standard boss in Kirby 64. This boss is one of my favorite robots in video games, and I'm sure it's easy to see why. It's just fucking cool. As you already know, I find Superstar Ultra to be overall much better than the original game. It has more modes as well as more replayability. More importantly, however, Superstar Ultra has a good handful of new bosses to fight. Just about every one of them I enjoy fighting, so I'll spare you the honorable mentions. The first of these bosses happens to be based on a character found in the original. However, this character gets a drastic redesign in Superstar Ultra. Remember Marx? You know, that little white guy from Milky Way Wishes? When you're going through Milky Way Wishes in Superstar Ultra, the exact same thing happens. Marx steals your wish from a galactic nova and turns into a bat-like abomination with ridiculous power at his disposal. So, Kirby confronts him, beats the hell out of him, and sends him crashing straight into Nova. And Kirby saves the day once again. Or did he? To give you a short answer, no, he didn't. After plowing through 9 of the fighters in the true arena, we get an ominous cutscene showing what happened after Nova exploded. The explosion may have killed Marx, but it didn't finish him off for good. Marx then absorbs all the power of Nova and morphs into the now infamous Marx Soul. Marx's soul form resembles the old Marx in both design and battle tactics. However, Marx Soul has quite a few new attacks to punish you with. Marx Soul can teleport, split himself open to create a black hole, shoot out 4 crescent blades, spawn thorny vines all across the battlefield, rise up from the ground, make it rain blue and pink paintballs, shoot out a storm of arrows, spit ice bombs down on you, let loose a huge beam of energy across the screen, and he can even hurl blue and pink Hadoukens straight at you. God damn, that's a lot of attacks. Defeating Marx Soul isn't too much of a hassle, but you better keep clear of all his attacks, as all of them can do immense damage to Kirby. Once you manage to drain his health completely, Marx Soul will let out an absurdly loud and haunting screech. Overall, this fight is a lot of fun. It's got intense atmosphere, and it even has a challenge factor to it, unlike regular Marx. Definitely making for one of my favorite bosses in Superstar Ultra. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go get myself a hearing aid. Thanks a heap, Marx. Another boss from Superstar Ultra? Well, yeah, I never said Marx Soul was my favorite now, did I? Interestingly enough, this is the only boss on the list that isn't exactly fought by just Kirby. No, in order to do this entry justice, we need some help from Sir Badass Meta Knight himself. At the end of Meta Nightmare Ultra, Meta Knight speaks to Nova, just as Kirby did in Milky Way Wishes. However, instead of fighting Marx, Meta Knight must fight a very different kind of foe. A warrior that was sealed off merely because his power was too great for anyone to handle. Pfft, bitch please, I'm Meta Knight. How hard can this dude possibly be? Oh, it is so on. The duel between Meta Knight and Galacta Knight is just pure badass. The thing I need to know is that this fight is hard as hell. Sure, he may be pink, but Galacta Knight definitely lives up to his legendary title. All of Galacta Knight's attacks are based around the same moveset that Meta Knight has as a boss. However, his attacks are faster and deal more damage. Galacta Knight can fly all over, nail you with both basic and multi-slash sword combos, shoot a wave of energy from his shield, generate shockwaves across the ground, leap around the arena while spinning his lance around, perform a downward thrust, generate a stream of energy from his lance that will circle around the arena, summon knights of his very own, form into a tornado to fling you around with, summon flame geysers, and he can even cast his own mock tornadoes to sweep across the battlefield. With all these attacks at his disposal, Galacta Knight is a tough enemy to kill, especially if you're playing as Meta Knight. Needless to say, this fight gets crazy intense later on, and it's nothing but constant fast-paced action all the way through. One of the aspects of this fight that I really like is the fact that it's a match of equals. Both Meta Knight and Galacta Knight have essentially the same amount of capabilities as one another. This makes for a serious increase in the situation at hand. The galaxy's two strongest warriors are duking it out on this barren space-like battlefield in an attempt to see which reigns supreme. And am I hearing things? There's also rock music playing in the background. Holy shit, that's some damn fine music. I don't think I have to go into much further detail as to why Galacta Knight ranks so damn high on this list. His design is awesome, the action is intense, the music is beastly, and the difficulty is just how I like it. Intense, badass, and most certainly memorable, Galacta Knight holds a solid number 6 spot on this list. And to think this isn't even my favorite boss in Superstar Ultra. I'm sure all of you have been waiting for some incarnation of the Dark Matter to show up on here. After all, the Dark Matter is the main antagonist of the whole series. With the exception of a few games, the Dark Matter is present in just about every installment in the series, usually in the form of its most infamous incarnation, Zero. No, not the badass Maverick Hunter, the creator and manipulator of the entire Dark Matter force. Zero made its first true appearance in Dreamland 3, where Kirby had to deal with the single-eyed monstrosity using the legendary Love Stick. In a stroke of luck, Kirby managed to destroy the savage deity. However, like many dark beings, Zero returns for one last showdown. In Kirby 64, if you manage to collect every crystal shard the entire game, the true final boss is revealed. The undead manifestation of Zero itself, Zero 2. Alright, there's no denying that all of you already know about this thing. So, to keep it short, I'll just go over the boss battle itself. In this battle, the way of fighting that is normally present in Kirby 64 is altered completely. Meaning this is the only boss on the list that features gameplay unique to the battle itself. The atmosphere that this battle invokes is amazing. What is this place you're fighting in anyway? Gygas's bachelor pad? Well, whatever. Let's talk about the fight already. In what's the only useful thing she's ever done, Ribbon forms up with Kirby to create Kirby 64's final ability, the Crystal Gun. The majority of Zero 2's body is impervious to all attacks, meaning the only way you can damage him is by shooting at his eye. Using the Crystal Gun, Kirby and Ribbon must bombard Zero 2's eye with a shitload of crystals. This certainly seems effective enough, especially since it causes Zero 2's eye to actually bleed. Yes, you're seeing this correctly. This isn't some overlay I put on the clip. This boss actually bleeds from its eye, making this one of the most gruesomely depicted bosses in Nintendo history. But I'm sure you already knew that. This may seem simple enough, but Zero 2 is no dumbass. While you're trying to shoot at its eye, Zero 2 will retaliate by constantly shooting exploding energy balls at you. And with pretty damn good accuracy, I might add. The key to destroying this thing relies mostly on good aim. When you finally shoot enough crystals into the eye, you finally get your chance to attack. At this point, Kirby must act immediately in order to damage the halo atop Zero 2's head. If you hit it enough times, it will disappear momentarily, revealing a band-aid on its head. Once you shoot a crystal at its band-aid, Zero 2 will start freaking out and flail its wings around recklessly. This is where Zero 2's true weak spot is unearthed, a long, thorny tail of some kind. Please keep all innuendos to yourself. Even though you've exploited its weak point, you don't get too much time to attack it, so hurry up and deal as much damage as you possibly can. Damage it enough and Zero 2 will explode, along with the entire dark matter force. At least for now. The fight with Zero Two is one of the most iconic battles in the Kirby series, and for very good reasons. The action is intense, the atmosphere is gloomy, and as always, the music is superb. Now, some of you might freak when you hear this, but Zero Two is actually not my favorite boss in Kirby 64. He's only my second favorite. This is my favorite boss in Kirby 64. Now, this one might stir up some slight controversy, but that's not going to stop me. Out of all the bosses in Kirby 64, the one I love the most is none other than the penultimate boss in the game, Miracle Matter. On a personal note, I feel as if Miracle Matter is one of the more underrated bosses in the series, because not only is it vastly overshadowed by Zero Two, but everyone seems to dismiss this boss for being simply lame. Well, I beg to disagree. Over the years, Miracle Matter has had an unusually strong nostalgic appeal to me for some reason. And I think I know why. It's probably because I've battled Miracle Matter more times than any other boss in the series. The battle is just so much fun. I guess I should stop blabbing and start elaborating on the boss itself. Now, most Kirby bosses use attacks that are specifically used for their own use. Very few of them have used Kirby's greatest attribute as a tool for fighting, but Miracle Matter is different. Not only does Miracle Matter utilize this, but he abuses it. Every single one of Miracle Matter's attacks are focused on each of Kirby's copy abilities. Due to this fact, Miracle Matter has a total of 7 forms, and each of their attacks derive from the element they're utilizing. The 7 forms are Fire, Ice, Spark, Stone, Bomb, Needle, and Cutter. All of these forms are impervious to all attacks that are not connected to the element each form is representing. While I'm at it, I might as well list off their attacks. The Fire form can spread huge lava columns all around the arena, which leave behind molten projectiles that can be either thrown or swallowed for the Fire ability. The Ice form simply moves around the area, surrounded by shards of ice that can either be thrown or swallowed for the Ice ability. The Spark form fires 3 beams of pure energy a few seconds apart from each other. These beams can ricochet off Miracle Matter, as well as go off screen, reappearing on the opposite side, making this one of the more dangerous forms. Eventually the beams slow down and turn into electric sparks, which can be either thrown or swallowed for the Spark ability. The Stone form attempts to drop small boulders on you while hovering. It will also drop on the ground itself and attempt to flatten you on the second try. The smaller boulders can be either thrown or swallowed for the Stone ability. The Bomb form surrounds itself with 4 small bubbles and then disbands them, which multiply in the air. This is definitely the least dangerous form. Like, come on, give me some bombs, not bubbles. Sure, the bubbles do have some dark purple spheres inside them, but they don't seem to do anything. The dark purple spheres can be either thrown or swallowed for the Bomb ability. The Needle form remains in the center of the room, as it casts out each of its 8 spikes to ram against the wall. As the spikes retract, they leave behind thorns clinging to the wall. The thorns can be either thrown or swallowed for the Needle ability. Finally, the Cutter form zips around the screen in a path that's easy to predict. After a few cycles, it will dive into the ground, cutting through it, and then return to the center. The small crescent-shaped segment at the tip can be either thrown or swallowed for the Cutter ability. Each of the forms must be hit 3 times with its own element, meaning you can't use a single ability throughout the whole fight. You're forced to alternate if you want any hopes of defeating Miracle Matter. I personally really like this factor, as it forces the player to have some flexibility with the copy abilities. Man, why couldn't Miracle Matter be in Superstar Ultra? I'd love to see how the Plasma Noobs would deal with that. Overall, Miracle Matter isn't that hard of a boss, but it's a lot of fun to fight with him. Not to mention, Miracle Matter's strategy of changing forms according to copy abilities is something that has yet to be replicated correctly. Also, my favorite Kirby boss theme ever plays during this fight. Just amazing. Now, if you ask the common folk what their favorite Kirby character is, you'll usually get 3 answers at the most. It's usually Meta Knight, King Dedede, or Kirby himself. Well, mine's not any of those characters. Sure, all of them are awesome, but there is one Kirby character that truly defines the term kick-ass. Oddly enough, my favorite Kirby character is the very leader of the Squeak squad, Daroach. I have very little explanation as to why he's my favorite, but in hindsight, he's the most badass Kirby character I know. Yes, even more so than Meta Knight. Throughout Kirby's Squeak Squad, Daroach and his gang of rodents spend the entire game stealing treasure chests from Kirby. But there was one treasure chest they stole from Dedede that held something different. After the battle with Meta Knight, Daroach became impatient and opened the treasure chest immediately after stealing it back. It turns out the chest was nothing but a resting place for the almighty Dark Nebula. Since he was the first one to open it, the Dark Nebula proceeded to possess Daroach, which he then used as a vessel to live among the world and wreak havoc. Knowing how this situation works, Kirby had no choice but to fight Daroach once again. The first phase of the final battle is a duel with Dark Daroach, and let me tell you, Daroach knows how to fight. He fights in the same fashion as the first battle, but the environment and his abilities are altered. Daroach has 3 main attacks. He can throw bombs, blast icy lasers from his scepter, and he can make use of his triple star cane. The bombs are thrown with ridiculous accuracy and form a large pillar of fire when they explode. The ice beams that he fires from his scepter are spammed constantly and are very hard to dodge at some points. His triple star cane will fire 3 stars at once, rapidly flying all over the screen, and all of them last for a long time. Oh yeah, he can also teleport everywhere, which makes him very hard to hit sometimes. Not to mention, Daroach does all of these actions constantly. Even with Tornado, this boss can be a challenge. Speaking of which, that brings up another challenge factor. In the first fight with Daroach, you could utilize the Tornado ability's scroll feature by using the ice on the floor. This made the first fight really easy. But in this fight, you have no such luck. All you have to rely on is your own skill, which is why I really like this fight. Also, Dark Daroach gets my vote for the coolest design of any Kirby boss. I mean, just look at him! Isn't that fucking cool? Personally, I think this should have been the final boss of Squeak Squad. After all, it was certainly challenging enough. Way better than Dark Nebula. Fuck, that boss was easy. Not to mention boring. Seriously, we went from this to this? Talk about a disappointment. Oh well, we got this fight, and that's perfectly fine by me. Oh, Daroach, why are you so fucking cool? Alright, all of you longtime viewers of mine saw this one coming. And to be frank, I'm sure you'll be pretty surprised to see that he's not number 1. Yep, at number 2, we have Masked Dedede. Alright, before you hit that dislike button, allow me to explain. I've talked about Masked Dedede before in my top 15 greatest boss battles list. And yes, he was in fact ranked as number 1. I talked a little bit about him, but not nearly enough. Alright, yes, I'll admit it. I blew that entry way out of proportions, and I think I over-exaggerated a bit with his boss description. But it's about time I told you the honest truth. When I first fought Masked Dedede 4 years ago, I simply adored this boss fight. I truly did. And honestly, I don't even know why I like this fight so much. He was at one point my favorite boss of all time, but things have changed. In all honesty, I don't have quite the same feelings about Masked Dedede as I used to. He's no longer my favorite boss battle ever, but he still ranks very high up there. Just wanted to get that out of the way. Even if he's no longer my all-time favorite anymore, there's still one notion that remains a true fact. Ergo, I really love this fight. Unlike every other fight with Dedede, the mood and tension of this fight has never been this high. The greatest thing this battle has going for it is the conflict at hand. It's classic Kirby vs Dedede taken to a whole new level. You've pwned his hide so many times, and now Dedede wants your damn head mounted on his wall. It's very similar to Samus vs Meta Ridley in Metroid Prime, and Mario vs Ultimate Koopa in Super Mario 64. You're fighting your greatest rival, one-on-one, in a rules-free deathmatch. I mean, just look! There's not even an audience watching! That's when you know things are getting personal. Well, sure, there's that one little Waddle Dee, but that's still not much. This fight's not necessarily difficult, but it's not exactly easy either. Sure, if you use Plasma or Stone, he can be taken down fairly quick. But if you're not careful, Dedede can easily fuck you over. Gameplay-wise, the fight is very heavily based on elements found in previous fights with Dedede. He has all of his standard attacks, such as jumping, inhaling, and smashing Kirby with his giant hammer. However, there are some new elements added, specifically concerning his new hammer. He has 4 new attacks. He can use his all-new hammer to spin around sporadically, shoot a stream of fire at you, send shockwaves across the floor, and even fire mini rockets at you. Also, need I mention you're fighting inside an electrified wrestling cage? And oh, sweet holy flippets, the music. Easily one of my favorite Kirby boss themes ever. The reason Masked Dedede is so damn high on this list is because it just has that classic rivalry charm to it. It feels like a fated matchup, which is probably why I love it so much. But I digress. The atmosphere is on par, the tension is raised high, the music is godly, and the overall fight is a thrill as well. All of you can give me crap for this as much as you want, but I love Masked Dedede, and he's definitely my favorite boss in Superstar Ultra. Simple as that. It makes you wonder how this could possibly be only number 2. Well, hear me out on this. Masked Dedede may be awesome, but he's no match for the number 1 spot. The greatest boss battle in Kirby history. Who might that be? Well, let's get a recap on. Number 15, Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright. Number 14, The Computer Virus. Number 13, Squashini. Number 12, Grand Doomer. Number 11, Dark Mind. Number 10, Necrodeus. Number 9, Mega Titan. Number 8, the HRH. Number 7, Marx Soul. Number 6, Galacta. Number 5, 02. Number 4, Miracle Matter. Number 3, Dark Daroach. And number 2, Masked Dedede. While Kirby's Return to Dreamland focuses mainly on elements from past installments, they did introduce a brand new character, a friendly little alien from Halcondra. Magolor is one odd character. He appears at the beginning of the game and seeks help from Kirby and his friends in order to repair his ship, the Lore Starcutter. Throughout the whole game, Magolor served as your main guide, helping you along the way. He's also a generally likable character too, with his Animal Crossing talk and his small round body. When the Lore Starcutter is finally repaired, Magolor takes you to his homeworld, Halcondra, where he points out that Landia is the main cause of all the problems in Dreamland, with her main source of power being the Master Crown. Having a target picked out, Kirby went through all of Halcondra to beat Landia to a pulp. Alright, I beat Landia! Let's sit back and watch the credits. Oh hey Magolor, you here to thank us? Wait, what are you doing with that crown? What? You son of a bitch! That's right, Magolor has been manipulating you throughout the entire game. Magolor takes my number 1 spot not only because he was manipulating you from the very start as a dubious ally, but also from the fact that he has the most complete battle of any Kirby boss ever. Having been mutated from the sheer energy of the Master Crown, Magolor sets out to take control of the entire universe. With the help of the Landia dragons, Kirby and his friends chase Magolor as he warps into an alternate dimension. The first phase of the battle consists of a 2D shooter-style stage where you fly past the dimensional barricades and blast through all of the Doomers that Magolor sends out to kill you. When you reach the end of the stage, Magolor sicks the Lore Starcutter at you, shooting a shitload of bullets at you and even flinging itself straight into you. The first part of this fight isn't all that hard, but it's a lot of fun to decimate the Lore Starcutter Gradius style. After destroying the Lore Starcutter, the real battle begins to take place. As all 4 heroes attempt to chase down Magolor in an awesome cinematic sequence, they're eventually shot down and start barreling towards a strange planetoid. Once landing there, Magolor shows you how much of a threat he really is. Now, some claim that Magolor is too easy of a final boss. Well, I have a rebuttal. Bullshit! Magolor is actually a very challenging boss, and not only by Kirby standards. Sure, you can be a noob and use the Spark ability, but why not be a fucking man for once? Magolor has one of the most varied attack arsenals of any final boss I have ever seen. even surpassing the Hag 1. With the limitless energy of the Master Crown at his disposal, Magolor can now teleport, control numerous portal rifts and black holes at once, fire a huge beam from his palms, cast untold amounts of dark energy spheres and hurl them at you, manipulate pools of suppressed energy to generate huge spikes to skewer you with. He can summon countless sphere doomers, and even utilize pyrokinesis. For most of the fight, you simply just beat Magolor down like any other boss. Sound easy? Not even close. With Magolor's initial form, even the most professional Kirby players need to watch their step. Not only does Magolor have a shitload of attacks, but they're also ridiculously powerful. The damage he causes ranges from not too much to a quarter of your health, and even half of your health if you get drawn into the black hole he creates. When you finally whittle him down to just a small amount of health, he'll make it so only something really powerful can harm him. What's that mean exactly? It means you can only damage him with your super abilities. I'm dead serious. Once you've hit him with various super abilities 4 times, you have to strike him with your super sword ability, much like you did with Grand Doomer. Upon swinging, both you and Magolor will clash together, making you wave your Wii Remote sporadically. When you manage to overpower him, you lay a series of slashes on him and finish Magolor off. Yet, after all that fighting, Magolor is still not finished. At last, he shows you his final form, Magolor Soul. In this phase, things get even tougher for the player. Not only does Magolor Soul look grotesque as all hell, but he's even more deadly than his first form. All of regular Magolor's abilities are still there, but their power and overall magnitude is greatened. His actions focus mainly on portals. He can fire his beam into a portal, and then cast a shitload of them throughout the arena. He can fly into a portal and literally hurl himself at you. He casts a shitload of energy needles in multiple directions. He can juggle and hurl enemies at you. He can vertically invert the screen, and he can spread dark plasma waves in various different formations. Other than the change in appearance, Magolor Soul's main addition is that he can now use his own super abilities and enhance their effects through the power of the Master Crown. He uses your fire, sword, beam, and even hammer super ability to cause untold amounts of mayhem. And to top it all off, a fully orchestrated score of Return to Dreamland's main theme plays in the background. The best part is that this epic score plays while you're fighting quite possibly the strongest opponent you are ever going to fight. The only remotely bad thing I can say about this fight is that Magolor Soul dies in the exact same fashion as all the other bosses in the game. A very minor complaint, but who really cares about that? Magolor is such a good boss that it might as well be a fucking crime. All of your skills and abilities are put to the ultimate test against a manipulative being corrupted by limitless amounts of energy. Sure, it's one of the longest boss battles in all of video games, but there is nothing, literally nothing, bland about this boss in the slightest. I am Fawful's Minion, and Magolor is hands down my favorite Kirby boss ever. It's quite fitting, isn't it? The perfect Kirby game is home to the perfect Kirby boss. Seems perfectly fitting to me. Alright guys, see you all next time for the long-awaited top 30 copy abilities. Let's try and make this the best one yet.